And what's going on, Los Angeles, LAFB fam, Bruin Nation? How we doing? The Madman here on this Sunday morning. And wow, what a Sunday morning it has been. As we discussed yesterday, we were going to stay close on any breaking news over the next 24 to 48 hours. And the bomb has officially dropped. Head coach DeShaun Foster relieved of his duties as of this recording Sunday morning. And now the question becomes, what's next? But before we sort of dive into all of it, I must say, we knew this was going to be a possibility over the weekend. I was skeptical a little bit that administration would move this quickly on DeShaun, but it was very evident that the fan sentiment and all of the communication to the chancellor's office via emails, via letters, played an instrumental role in UCLA administration acting decisively and acting quickly on this situation and moving on from DeShaun Foster. Before we talk about the next steps and the days to come and the implications, both kind of tactically as well as strategically, I just want to take a pause to just recognize DeShaun Foster as a legendary UCLA Bruin, a Bruin for life. His statements were so classy in an extremely difficult situation. He will always be a Bruin. He will always be welcome with open arms and the red carpet. He will always bleed UCLA, and we will always have so much love and respect for him as a UCLA Bruin for life. His place in UCLA history has been etched in stone, and nothing can be done to change that in any way, shape, or form. And we wish DeShaun Foster nothing but the very best with an enormity of success in his personal as well as in his professional life moving forward. And we can't wait for the day to have DeShaun back at UCLA for various games, various events, as this is sort of ancient history. And so just want to honor and respect a man who bleeds UCLA and who has always been a Bruin for life and who will always be a Bruin for life, and an individual, truthfully, that was put in a very difficult situation to be in this job for 18 months, not having a recruiting cycle in 2024. He did the best he could, but it was just a situation where the fit, given his skill set and his experience level at this particular stage in his budding professional career, just simply didn't align with the demands and the needs of a role such as being the head coach of a major college football program, particularly at this stage in the era of college football. So just want to wish DeShaun the best and hope moving forward that fans give him the love, the respect, the care that he so greatly deserves as an absolute Bruin legend and a Bruin icon. And nothing that has happened over the last 18 months does in any way, shape, or form diminish the shining star that DeShaun Foster is in the UCLA universe. And so having said that, moving forward, a lot of layers to this situation. It is very unprecedented for UCLA to be able to make a coaching change in season. And so now where do we go from here? And, a lot of conversation about now tactically what happens. Martin Jarmond and Senior Associate Athletic Director Aaron Atkins are going to lead a national search for the next UCLA coach. But I thought what was very interesting is there was going to be a committee that is going to be formed of very notable sports and business executives that have ties to UCLA and to UCLA athletics. And I think that was a nice addition. I have a sense that is an implementation by our new Chancellor Julio Frank, who is just such an incredible leader, incredible intellect, incredible man. I think he understood, the gravity of the situation, and I think he is putting his spin and his flavor on how things need to be done moving forward. And I think just, again, the overwhelming fan sentiment where his office was flooded with emails and letters and messages about the program needing to change direction in a very quick and decisive fashion ultimately compelled him to be able to act very, very quickly. And now, as we shift gears, I think it's Martin Jarmond who is the one who's on the clock. Because when you think about the landscape of college sports now moving forward, the last couple of weeks, there's been some best practices around how do athletic departments spend their budgets and how do they allocate across the different sports. And a standard that's emerged is 75% of an athletic department's budget goes to football, 15% goes to basketball, 5% goes to women's basketball, and 5% goes to everything else. And so when you think about that as a heuristic to be able to assess scale, magnitude, resources, even importance of the various sports in a college ecosystem, it is very clear that there's sort of three sports, with football at the very top by a significant margin, that really should drive decision-making, funding, strategic decisions, resources, but also how an athletic director is graded. And so when you think about all the other sports that UCLA is doing terrific in, we're so proud of that at UCLA, of having the second most national championships of any school in the country. But you have to treat many of these other sports as, and I hate to say this, glorified intramural sports and glorified intramural extracurricular activities. When you look at an athletic director's salary and when you look at the athletic director's scope within a university ecosystem, you really need to be able to grade that person off of what's going on in the three sports: college football, men's basketball, women's basketball. And when we look now at Martin Jarman, we see UCLA presumably going to be preseason number one in women's college basketball. But let's not forget, head coach Corey Close has been with the program since the early 2010s. That was not a Martin Jarman hire. Martin has sort of inherited a terrific program there. When we think about men's basketball with Coach Mick Cronin, that iconic 2021 Final Four run, and all of the things that are happening, the acquisition now of Donovan Dent, all of that is something that Martin inherited. He didn't hire Mick Cronin. He didn't sort of put his stamp on necessarily the basketball program in the way that, Mick Cronin has, for instance, and others. So when you think about Martin Jarman's report card now, it really comes down to his ability to hire this next football coach. And I've always said an athletic director gets two cracks at hiring a football coach. Martin Jarman used one chit on DeShaun Foster. Obviously, that didn't work out. But now it's the second opportunity to hire a football coach. And his destiny as the athletic director of UCLA is now inextricably linked to who this next football hire is going to be. And their success is going to be absolutely intertwined with one another. And so Martin Jarman, although seemingly unscathed in this situation, we weren't sure, was Chancellor Frank going to look at this from just a DeShaun Foster perspective? Was he going to look at this from a Martin Jarman perspective? Was he going to look at it holistically? Seems like Martin Jarman safe for now, but now Martin Jarman is on the clock, leading this next head coaching search moving forward. And so very, very interesting what happens. Now, in the days to come, Tim Skipper is the interim head coach through the end of this season. Tim Skipper was interim head coach of Fresno State, acquired a 7-7 record. I think it's the right decision. He's the only one on the staff with head coaching experience. He came in as a special assistant, a special advisor to DeShaun Foster, given DeShaun Foster's lack of head coaching and coordinator experience, as an advisor to help DeShaun with all aspects of thinking, decision-making, kind of working through problems as a head coach. Tim Skipper now steps in, but this seems to be totally in an interim fashion here. This selection now of head coach for UCLA needs to be vast. It needs to be extensive. It needs to be detail-oriented, and it needs to be right. And so the implications here moving forward from an NCAA policy perspective, of course, is that anytime there is a coaching change, players now are eligible to have a 30-day window into the transfer portal. So all UCLA players now are eligible for a 30-day window into the transfer portal. And what are the implications there? I think it would be hard for me to envision a scenario where a significant number of players, if any, enter the transfer portal right now, just because of the timing. We're already 3 weeks into the season. Any opportunity to sort of join another team, 25%, 33% into a season, the chances that you're going to play and be a vital cog of that particular team are really next to none. And so in the best interest, I think, of these players, they are best suited to sort of play this season out and then make a determination at the end of the season whether they want to stay at UCLA or whether they want to try their hands at another university. And so much of that is going to depend on who the next head coach is going to be. Now, having said that, this firing also comes at a unique time in the season as it pertains to redshirting, because it is at the 4-game mark where if you play 4+ games, you are not eligible to redshirt. But now at the 3-game mark, some players could maybe think about redshirting this season, because depending on the circumstances, the situation, do you want this to be one of your years of eligibility that are counted? At 0-3 right now, UCLA trying to galvanize this group. But as we discussed, this is ultimately a lost season. This is a 2 to 3 win team at best and a winless team at worst. And so for these players, how do you want to sort of take a look at that? Obviously, there's an opportunity to have a lot of reps, have a lot of playing time, to get better day over day, to sort of improve your stock, both from a college as well as from an NFL prospect perspective. But does the system line up with how you're playing? Were you already unhappy to begin with? So it's going to be fascinating to see in the days and weeks to come, not necessarily who jumps into the transfer portal, because I think that's going to be a very small number, if any, but are there players that would consider that redshirt situation? And so we'll continue to sort of monitor it. And as and when things drop, we will be sure to let you know. Now, from sort of a macro perspective, folks, what does this mean moving forward? Who's the next head coach going to be? And I think we have to sort of start with some of the names that really bubbled up last time. And by last time, I mean, 18 months ago when DeShaun ultimately was hired, and assess where they are. And I think there's going to be some names that are going to pop out right away over the next days and weeks. But we got to think about this holistically. Let's not forget the names that were very, very popular and very, very desirable 18 months ago were Jonathan Smith, Jedd Fisch, Tony White, D'Anton Lynn. And I think a lot of those names are going to continue to bubble up again. Now, the interesting thing here with Jonathan Smith and Jedd Fisch is they have taken big multi-year contracts and jobs with other Big Ten schools. Jonathan Smith is at Michigan State. Jedd Fisch is at Washington. So given that they are each very, very early in their tenure at those respective schools, that buyout number, if UCLA were to pursue either of those individuals, would be exorbitantly high. And the much has already been made of the athletic department deficit, particularly due to dead money associated with coaching contracts. So the chance that UCLA would take on significant buyout amount on top of what the new contract would be for the coach, I think would just be slim to none, unless a mega booster comes in, Casey Wasserman comes in, some of the other mega boosters at UCLA, and there's a lot of them out there, come in and say, look, I want to personally kind of get involved here and really turn this ship around, and I don't care how much it costs. So for me, Jonathan Smith and Jedd Fisch remain incredible coaching candidates. I just don't know financially if it makes sense at this point, given how big that buyout number would be, which would then shift over to individuals that are coordinators. And I think the two names initially out of the gates that are going to bubble up extremely high is going to be Tony White and D'Anton Lynn. Tony White, of course, decorated UCLA Bruin. He was a great linebacker in the heyday of UCLA football. He knows the Big Ten so well as defensive coordinator of Nebraska, and now most recently and currently as defensive coordinator of Florida State. So big jobs. He's done really well everywhere he's gone. And you can tell that Tony White is someone who's A, ready to take the next step in his career, and B, nothing would be greater for him than to come back and help resurrect his alma mater. So keep an eye out on Tony White as someone out of the gate that is going to draw a lot of interest from Martin Jarman as well as from this larger committee as a whole. And given the fact that he's a defensive coordinator currently and not a head coach, that buyout number is much more digestible, much more palatable, because coordinator, even the best of coordinators relative to the best of coaches' salaries, you're talking about a 1/5, 1/6 amount between a great coordinator and a great coach in terms of salary. So economically, it makes a lot of sense. And then the other name you have to sort of think about early is D'Anton Lynn. D'Anton Lynn defensive coordinator of UCLA, back in the 2023 season, and just what he was able to do of taking that defense from being in the low 80s to top 15 in the country was absolutely significant. You're seeing the improvement across town at USC on defense in the 2 years that he's been there. It's very apparent that he's ready to be a head coach and wants that opportunity. He almost got plucked by USC to go to his alma mater in Penn State in a lateral to be the defensive coordinator over the course of this season. SC ponied up, gave him what he needed to retain him. But there has always been a sense, even within the USC community, that D'Anton Lynn is going to be at USC for a short-term period just because he is such a desirable entity in various coaching circles. So I would imagine Tony White and D'Anton Lynn, at least out of the gates, are going to generate a lot of juice. But then I think there's going to be a wider range of candidates, particularly candidates, both offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators, from teams that are really significant right now. So think about offensive and defensive coordinators at Oregon. Think about offensive and defensive coordinators at Texas and Michigan and Ohio State and LSU. And that, along with kind of an intimacy potentially of the Big Ten, along with West Coast ties from a recruiting standpoint, those are probably going to be the three elements and characteristics that Martin Jarman and this search committee are going to look for initially. And so as things develop, we're going to have it all covered for you on LAFB Network. Going to obviously, Thriller and I are going to break down some candidates later in the week. We're going to get Wayne on all his thoughts of everything that's transpired over the days to come. But I think the last thing I want to leave with fans on is we have to now think of this as a 2-year rebuild and a 2-year process. It's not just about 2025, but it's also about 2026. Because the one thing that DeShaun Foster did extremely well that you can't argue is recruiting. And we've already seen, as of Sunday morning, some recruits decommit. And that's expected because the relationship was built with DeShaun Foster. And if DeShaun Foster is now no longer the coach, as a recruit, you have to reassess what's going on. And most notably, 3 decommits as of this morning, Sunday morning here. But the most notable was Johnny Jones, which was the 6'7" offensive tackle, 4-star recruit out of Florida. He was one of the 2 decorated recruits that really anchored this DeShaun Foster class. He has now decommitted and talking about, other schools like Penn State, like Florida State, that had shown a lot of interest in him. So expect to see some decommits here, Bruin fans, over the days and weeks to come, because again, the relationship that was established with DeShaun Foster now has to be recreated. And until a permanent head coach is in place, there's going to be too much fluctuation and uncertainty for recruits to be able to really commit in an earnest fashion with UCLA. So as a result of that, even if a new coach is selected right at the end of the regular season, perhaps it can be done sooner. But I think realistically, we're looking at kind of right at an end of November, potentially timeframe. Hopefully they can pull that to the left. But the timing is just so interesting here that I think it'll be challenging, not impossible, but challenging to pull that to the left. But a new coach is going to have to come in, and they're behind the 8 ball on 2026 recruiting already. So we have to sort of give that new coach some grace, given the timing of this situation. So 2025 is going to be a rebuild. 2026 is also going to be a rebuild. And then that coach has a year to install his system and then really start the recruiting process for 2027 and onwards. So Bruin fans, we got to think of this as a 2-year rebuild right now on the road to really kind of getting back and making a jump in 2027. So that's what we have for you, fans. Holy cow, it's been a wild last 24 to 48 hours. And as always, had to jump on here Sunday morning. My phone's been blowing up all morning, and really had to share with all of you my perspective on everything that's transpired over a very busy weekend. But before we let you go, I have to sort of let you guys know of our flagship sponsor, Sleeper. Ever heard of the Sleeper app? Here's a little secret. It's more than just a platform for season-long fantasy leagues. This year, millions of users enjoyed playing fantasy sports on Sleeper, but the app offers so much more. Live stats, real-time updates, and visualization on all stats. Newsfeed, get lightning-fast updates on your favorite players and teams. Real-time chat, engage with other users about individual plays and performances during the NFL and NBA seasons. Download the #1 sports app today and experience it for yourself using promo code UCLA LAFB. Well, fans, friends, wishing you a terrific rest of your Sunday and your weekend and early part of the week. The Madman will be back in just a few days with Thriller, with Wayne, and we'll continue to break all of this down on the roller coaster that has been the 2025 UCLA season. And my goodness, we're still only in week 3, but we always got your back. And fans, your voice matters so much. If the lesson over these last 48 hours has been that the fan voice, the alumni voice, the UCLA booster voice, the UCLA ecosystem voice is very loud, because the chancellor heard it, administration heard it, and they acted. So you play a very vital role. Your commitment, your passion, your engagement has a huge role on the future direction of UCLA. And like I always say, be loud, be proud, be passionate Bruins. And as always, 4's up forever.